It is Thursday, January 29th, and you are watching the Sick Podcast. Trust the process. Folks, today we're going to be doing a little like we did last week, and we're going to take a suggestion from one of you. We're going to take one of those topics. I'm not going to say which one yet. You'll just have to tune in to find out. A little later on, we're going to get to Snake's hot take, and we've got a couple mailbag questions in the queue, and a whole lot more in between. It's going to be a fun show, and it all starts right here, right now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Trust the process. The sickest NHL prospect podcast with Snake and Shayne.
With the 5th overall selection in the 2024 NHL Draft, the Montreal Canadiens are proud to select Ivan Demidov.
It's gonna be sick.
That's right, producer Shayne here, joined as always by my co-host Simon the Snake Boisvert. Snake, how are we feeling today?
Doing great. And you, Shayne?
Excellent. I'm doing excellent. I'm excited for this show. Always looking forward to it. I know we've got some great topics to cover. And, you know, we say it every show, right? We encourage everybody to chime in the comments, write your suggestions, your questions, your complaints, whatever it may be. And we've been taking topic suggestions as well, not just mailbag questions. We did it last week, and we're going to do it again this week because we had a good one, okay? We have a really good one lined up. Snake, you really like this one. I think you have a lot to say about it too. So why don't we bring that comment up? And this comes from Desmond, okay? Desmond Decker is saying, an idea for your future show. Well, we're doing it. Do teams get more value reaching for a rising prospect or getting a faller later than expected? I remember Jacob Chychrun falling on draft day in 2016, and he turned out great. But then there's guys like Grigorenko in 2012, who was seen as a top 5 pick in his D-1 year, who never amounted to anything. And same goes for some risers. I'm curious to hear, Snake, on which category typically outperforms their draft rank. This is really interesting, Snake, because, I mean, we have so many fallers, so many risers that have done well, done not so well. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to be able to name all of them because there would be too many, but I think I have quite a few examples that will illustrate our listeners' comment. Mm-hmm. And I would say that, first of all, we have to define what is a faller, what is a riser. Mm-hmm. The way I understand a faller is a guy who was ranked very high in his draft -1 season, or even during the summer preceding his draft year, and who obviously doesn't get drafted as high as we thought he would be. But there's quite a big range. Like, there's one guy on my list who was drafted in the 7th round, and he was supposed to be a top 5 pick. And we have another guy who was supposed to be drafted number 1, and he fell to number 4. I think you know who I'm talking about. So you know, that's my definition of a faller. I think it's sort of a reputation versus where he's drafted the year after. And it's the gap between those two elements. Mm-hmm. A riser, to me, is a guy who, again, in his draft -1 year, or even in September of his draft year, wasn't seen as high as when he got drafted. So I have a few examples of these guys, but I have more fallers than risers.
Yeah.
And now we're going to, while I was doing the exercise, I was trying to figure out, how can you smell the fallers who are going to be, let's call it a draft steal, or the fallers who are falling for the right reason, and obviously they're not going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
So I have, I'm going to start, I basically did my research for the last 12, 13 drafts, you know, to keep it contemporary.
Relevant.
But I have to talk about probably the granddaddy of them all, well, maybe not the granddaddy, but one that a lot of fans remember. Even young guys like you might have heard of him. Angelo Esposito.
Yeah.
Angelo Esposito, in the 2004-2005 season, which was his 16-year-old season, was playing in Quebec under Patrick Roy. And he was also playing with Alexander Radulov. And Esposito had a fantastic 16-year-old season, and he was seen as the number 1 pick in 2006. The 2006 draft was highlighted by Eric Johnson, Jonathan Taves, Phil Kessel, Nicholas Backstrom, and he was supposed to be better than all of them. And then during his draft year, as the year went on, he, maybe not a top 5 pick. Oh, maybe not a top 10 pick. And then he was drafted 20th overall. And I remember the Canadians passed on him, and they chose Ryan McDonough. And a lot of fans were pretty mad here in Montreal that they didn't pick the local guy who was supposed to be obviously a steal at number 12. Ryan McDonough was the better player. So you see, could we learn lesson from this?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, basically, when I look at a player, I like forward progression. Like, I don't like guys who reach a plateau at a young age, or guys who are better at 16 than they were at 17. But some of them do rebound. And in the names that I have for you, some of them actually did and became, let's call them, I don't know if they were draft steals, but they were obviously underdrafted.
That's fair.
So I'll start around 2012. I'll start in 2012. There was a guy at the beginning of the season, Nick Ebert. He was a defenseman from Ontario. He was supposed to be a top 5 pick. And there was even talk that this guy could win a Norris Trophy one day. Nick Ebert became the last pick of the draft in 2012. 211th overall, if I'm not mistaken. Never played in the NHL.
Yeah.
But there was another faller that our listener is mentioning, Grigorenko. Another one who was seen as a possible number 1 pick. Fell to number 12. Played a little bit in the NHL, but wasn't very good. Went back to Russia. But there was also a faller on that day, sort of. He was supposed to be a top 3 pick. Was the 11th overall pick. It was Philip Forsberg.
You had him number 1.
I had him number 1, yes. So, but I think obviously he was drafted 11, so a lot of teams decided to pass on him, although it was not a great draft. But a lot of teams decided to pass on this guy. I don't remember why, but, there were a lot of defensemen chosen that year. Maybe that's what happened. And there was a run of defensemen, Jacob Trouba, Morgan Riley, Griffin Reinhart, all these guys. But now, Ebert, I think he had reached his peak at age 16. That's what I saw in his draft year. So I would not have drafted him. Grigorenko, there were things in his game that I really didn't like. I thought he wasn't hardworking enough. And that was one thing. Forsberg, I stuck to my guns. I had him number 1. I was even surprised that he went down to number 11. I thought it was going to be maybe number 3, number 4, maybe for the Habs who took Galchenyuk. So it depends. Then the year after, there was one faller that I remember, again from Quebec, Ramparts, Anthony Duclair.
Turned out pretty good.
That was a guy who was supposed to be a first-round pick. He had a great 16-year-old season, a la Esposito. And then he had a so-so 17-year-old season, third-round pick. Look, he's still in the league. And he's had some nice scoring streaks. I mean, did he become a star? No. But I think that, he went through a lot of teams. But he still earned a lot of money during his career. And he's still around. A big faller from 2015, Matthew Barzal.
Oh.
I know it was a strong draft, but it was very surprising that he went down to number 16. And even the Edmonton Oilers passed on him because they traded that pick and a second-round pick to get Griffin Reinhart.
Oh.
Yeah. One of the worst deals ever. So that's a guy who I think in his draft year was pretty good. So again, to me, it was a surprise. It was like Forsberg. I'm thinking, okay, why is he falling?
Mm.
And 2016, we had Jacob Chikrin, who was mentioned. Was supposed to be number 1 or number 2 or number 3, top 3 pick, I would say. Then mid-round selection, did great. But there's a guy that year who was given what is it called? The exceptional status. Yeah. In the OHL. Sean Day. Sean Day played in the OHL at age 15.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be one of the top picks. He dropped to the 3rd round. Sean Day didn't play. 2017, 2 fallers, 2 European guys who were 1 and 2 on the European list at the beginning of the year. Klim Kostin, Timothy Liljegren. Kostin, late round pick. Liljegren, mid-round pick. Liljegren's in the league, playing okay for the Sharks, but he's no more than a number 4, number 5 defenseman. And Kostin, he was very, he was like a flash in the pan in the NHL. So you see, that's 2 examples of guys who justifyingly went down. Yeah. And I think with Liljegren, I remember at age 16, I liked him a lot because he was a very smooth, fast skater. But then at age 17, you start picking on him and you realize, well, he's not that great of a puck mover. He doesn't have much offense. He's not that great at defending. And you're thinking, okay, it's such a, he's going to be an NHLer, but no more than what we see right now, or that we've seen with him in Toronto.
Yeah.
So you see, justifyingly. Now, 2018, lots of risers, couple of fallers. I have 3 risers in the top 10. Guys who are not even under the radar at the beginning of the year. Let's start with number 9, Vitaly Kravtsov. He had good KHL playoffs, and just based on that, the Rangers picked him at number 9. Okay, why? That was a riser. Barrett Hayton. John Chayka, who picked him at number 5, who was the GM in Arizona at the time. He was obsessed with this guy, and that's his words. He says, I watched every one of his games this year. He's a fantastic player. I think he's an okay player, but fine, not a top 5 guy. I think he's good, but it's not great. And at number 3, what a riser. Jesperi Kotkaniemi. The guy who was supposed to be a mid to late round pick at first. He had a great U18 tournament. There were not many centermen available that year. The Habs needed a centerman. They went for him. But one might say, okay, that's an anomaly. Other teams would have picked him 20th. Not so sure, because I think he was ranked number 5 on Bob McKenzie's list. And Bob McKenzie's list is a survey of scouts.
That's it.
It's not his opinion. It's a survey of NHL scouts. So obviously, Kotkaniemi became a riser with on a lot of teams' lists. And what happened with with Kotkaniemi? I mean, it's been discussed, ad nauseum. But I think the problem was that, from what we heard, is that he was not. Let's just say he didn't have Sidney Crosby's work ethic.
Few do, right? But I understand what you mean.
He didn't want to practice face-offs. No. He was kind of like, okay, I'm an NHLer now, and that's it. I'm going to sit on my laurels. Who knows what's going to happen to this guy? He might be bought out at the end of the year because he's going to be, he's going to be 26 years old. I think he can be bought out for 1/3 of the contract. We'll see what the Hurricanes do. 2 fallers that year. Another guy who was granted exceptional status, Joe Veleno.
Yeah.
Early in the year, or even the year before, he was talked about as a top 10 pick. Went late in the first round, I think 30th overall. It's a fork liner. And Ryan Merkley. Ryan Merkley would be a top 5 pick, but in his case, it was more like an attitude problem. Or a perceived, let's call it perceived attitude problem, because like I say, you read things, but I'm not in the dressing room. I don't know this information firsthand, but he had a perceived attitude problem. And look, he never really played in the show.
Would you consider Philip Zadina as a faller in that one? Because I remember hearing it was Dalin, Svechnikov, Zadina. That was the top three.
A tiny faller. Yeah, I would consider him a faller, but not a major faller because he was still picked number 6.
6 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, before Quinn Hughes. So a minor faller, let's call it.
Yeah.
2019, we're going with a faller and a riser. Not a big faller, but a faller nonetheless. Vasily Podkolzin, who was seen as a top 3 pick at the beginning of the year. And then we realized during his draft year that the guy had no offense, basically. And he still doesn't. He's okay in Edmonton. I think he's a good role player, but obviously not worthy of a top 3 pick, not even a top 10 pick. The riser, one of the biggest risers in recent history. You know who I'm talking about.
Moritz Seider.
Oh, wow. A guy who was not under the radar, and everyone was shocked when the Red Wings took him. But he was very good, if I recall, at the Olympics the year before. Didn't Germany win the silver medal or something? Because NHLers weren't at the games.
Yeah.
And I think they won silver medal. It was a big surprise. And Moritz Seider was pretty good. So that was a big riser. And you know what? He became a star.
Hey, redraft, he goes probably second. He goes top 3 at least. That's for sure.
Top three, of course. Yeah.
I
did this. I did the exercise with Tony the other day, and I think Tony had him in his top 3. Yeah.
I mean, the top 4 is pretty much a lock. It's
the top. Yeah.
Jack Hughes, Seider, Boldy, and Caulfield. I think that's.
Yeah. Well, there's another one also, but you also have to look at later rounds. There were a couple of guys picked a little bit later that could make a case for the top 5.
Mm-hmm. Would Caulfield be a faller in that one? Because I kept hearing top 8, and then he kept going. I was like, what the hell is going on here?
I had him at 10. I know that I think it was Corey Pronman on The Athletic. He had him at 5. I don't know where he was on Bob McKenzie's list. A little bit of a faller, but it's not because he wasn't good. They were just wary of a guy who's 5'7", although Alex DeBrincat had scored 41 goals that season. And he was kind of a comparable. I don't think they're the same player, but he was a comparable in terms that he was a 5'7" goal scorer.
Yeah.
So 2020, I have a tiny riser because at the beginning of the year, he was not seen as a top 5 pick, but became a top 5 pick, Jake Sanderson. So I think he was well perceived by scouts, but I don't think he was a top 5 pick. So that was a riser that was justified.
Yeah,
because he's become very, very good. In 2021, I have 2 risers and a faller. A riser was Mason McTavish. I don't think a lot of people saw him going number 3 at the beginning of the year. Another riser, maybe it was just Ottawa's opinion, but Tyler Boucher at 10. But I'm not sure how many teams had him in their top 10, 15. I'm really not sure because most public lists had him in the second round. But obviously, at least one team saw something. And I'm sure if Ottawa took him at number 10, they probably knew that someone else could probably take him before their second pick. So that was a disaster. And there was a big faller that year. A guy who was considered a possible number 1 pick a couple of years before, Ati Ratu.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, went in the second round.
Yeah.
He's been going back and forth between NHL and AHL. So obviously a justified faller, I would say. This guy really reached a plateau at age 16, 17. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking, okay, this is not the guy. He was a late birthday. And over the years, it was like, okay, he's not progressing. I think the fallers, the main characteristic of these fallers that we've been talking about is that they're not progressing in their draft year. And you're always supposed to be a progression. And the risers, well, it's the other way around. Now I'm going to 2022. Shayne Wright, a faller, I would say, because he was seen number 1 guy all the way down to the wire. He was seen as the number 1 guy. Brad Lambert.
Huge.
Another guy who was seen as a top 3 pick, a la Ratu, you know, and he late first round. Now he's in the AHL. He's not even good in the American Hockey League. And 2023, I have a riser and a couple of fallers. I would consider David Breitbacher a riser. I not
fair. Yeah.
He wasn't on anybody's list at the beginning of the year. So he became a riser. And I'm sure had the Canadians not taken him, he probably would have been picked next, 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So it's too early to tell in this case. 2 fallers to an extent. Matei Michkov, who was going to be the Russian Connor Bedard, and he dropped to number 7. But I think it was because of, again, perceived attitude problems or lack of work ethic, maybe. Yeah. And we can see in Philadelphia, it's not going well with the coach. So maybe these guys were right. And a big faller, not a known name, but a guy who was supposed to be the top defenseman in that draft at the beginning of the year. Cam Allen. Cam Allen from Ontario. He became a 5th round pick by Washington. He's now in the American Hockey League in Hershey. He's fine, but this guy was supposed to be a top 5 pick at the beginning of the year. And he didn't amount to anything. Well, so far, but it's early to tell. But so far, he really didn't do well in his draft year. 2024, I would say there were 2 fallers, 1 riser. The riser was Beckett Seneca.
Easily, eh?
He was even surprised. He didn't. 3.
And it was a good riser too.
This is a guy who in December was not even in the first round of any list, central scouting, whatever. He was not even there. And then he had incredible playoffs. And look at the guy. Yeah. I mean, he's top goal scorer amongst rookies this year. The guy's he's incredible. I love Beckett Seneca. Demidov was a faller, I would say.
Unexpectedly, but yeah.
Unexpectedly. Was it because of Mishkov? Was there like kind of a false, what do you call it? Was he linked to Mishkov just because he's Russian and he played in the same league? Or
you have to imagine that's the only explainable factors, like the fact that he's Russian. Yeah. We don't know if he'll come over. They always do. So
he had 1 year left on his contract. What was that thing?
Yeah.
So I can understand Chicago. They took not Chicago, but San Jose. They took Celebrini. I mean, Celebrini is untouchable. But Chicago taking Lev Shunov, who's a fine defenseman, but before Demidov. Columbus taking Caden Lidstrom. Ooh. What was that? Beckett Seneca. Beckett Seneca. You can make a case for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I prefer Demidov, but you can make a case for Seneca. No one will ever tell Anaheim, why didn't you take Demidov? Unless Demidov becomes a 150 point a year guy. No one will blame Anaheim. But Columbus and Chicago, they really missed the boat. There was another faller, a guy who was seen as a potential top 3 pick.
Is Cole Aaron Kiviharu?
Well, yeah, he's one of them who was seen. I don't have him on the list, but I do remember him, the Finnish defenseman. I think he was picked in the 2nd round. He was supposed to be a top 5 pick.
I think later.
And
4th
round, yeah, 4th round.
Really
you're right.
Fell.
Yeah. It was Cole Eiserman.
True.
Remember?
Yes.
Cole Eiserman at the under-17 tournament. He was a scoring machine. He was playing with James Higgins, and these guys were supposed to be the future of American hockey. Mm-hmm. And Eiserman dropped to number 20. I don't know what's going to happen with the Islanders. He is a goal scorer. You can't deny. But he has so many holes in his game. Will he sign at the end of the year? I would think so. Will he go to Hamilton? Because for those who don't know, the Islanders are going to move their farm team to Hamilton.
Yeah.
Newly renovated what used to be called the Cops Coliseum, where they had the Canada Cup in 1987. And at the time, Hamilton was a strong contender to get an NHL franchise. And I think the only thing that prevented them from having a franchise was that they were very close to Toronto and Buffalo. I think so Hamilton is getting an AHL franchise back. The Habs had their farm team in Hamilton for many,
Bulldogs.
many years, owned by their farm team in Hamilton for many,
Bulldogs.
many years, owned by Michael Andlauer, who's the Senators owner now. So Yzerman probably would go to Hamilton next year. We'll see what happens. He's kind of a mystery. This guy. It's hard to predict, because if someone told me Yzerman is going to score 30, 35 goals, I wouldn't be surprised. And if someone told me Yzerman's going to be an AHL player, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think it'll depend on who he plays with, and it'll depend how much his scoring outweighs the fact that he has nothing else in his game. Could he be a Michael Ryder? You remember Michael Ryder, perhaps?
I loved Michael Ryder.
Yeah, he was a scorer. Not much else in his game, but he was a scorer. He had a couple of 30-goal seasons. Maybe Yzerman will become a Michael Ryder. We shall see. And for 2025, I have two guys, a faller and a riser. Obviously, the faller, I just mentioned him, James Higgins, was supposed to be the number one pick. And even, you remember, even Islanders fans were rooting for the Islanders to take him over Matthew Schaefer because he was from the area.
I think they're happy with the decision they made.
Look, Hagen's in Boston. Who knows? Boston's a hardworking team. They always find ways to win games. If he adapts to the Bruins culture, I think he can be a solid NHL player. And the riser, Brady Martin.
Yeah.
Brady Martin was not on anybody's radar. And then at some point, he became like the flavor of the month. And he was being called the next Sam Bennett. And I'm sure the fact that Sam Bennett had so much success in the playoffs for the last few years in Florida probably helped raise Martin's stock.
Yeah.
Because because there were similarities in his game. Martin is not necessarily a fantastic offensive player, but I mean, he's pesky.
Mm-hmm.
He's hardworking, and this is a guy. I don't know if he reaches the playoffs and he plays 100 games a year. He's the kind of guy who's going to be on fire for 100 games, which is very, very hard. Remember, he was the guy working on the family farm. He didn't attend the draft. Did he attend the draft? I think he wasn't there.
He
was on the family farm.
The farm, yeah,
because they were doing. I think it was crop season or whatever. And so I really like this guy. I had him ranked number 5 also. And at the beginning of the year, I knew of him, but I mean, I didn't have much time for him. And then at some point, I thought he was great. So is there a conclusion to draw from this? I don't know what you think. Personally, I think that I think it's really a case, on a case-by-case basis. As a general rule, I would say that when a guy drops, you have to figure out why is he dropping. Mm-hmm. Because there are different reasons. I think the lack of progress is probably the main reason why you have to be careful, because most of these guys, they do not necessarily bounce back to the prior level. As for the risers, you have to be careful of, what I just call the flavor of the month. But the risers that I've talked about, I think, most of them are doing fine.
That's it.
I don't know what you think, but it's not easy. I mean, there's no rule of thumb,
No, exactly. And with the fallers, I mean, the tricky part is figuring out why they're falling, Snake. Like you mentioned, if they plateaued, then you let them fall. Like you maybe take a swing in the 4th or 5th round. But if there's other factors involved, like take Demidov, for example, right? People are scared to draft a Russian. That's a terrible reason. Like if that's your reason to let that player fall, horrible, right? So you jump on that, and the Habs did. So you really have to like pinpoint the reason why, which can be hard. But I think the reason why is a good indicator as to how the player will turn out in the end. Because other than those who plateaued, all the other fallers that had, other reasons pretty much all panned out. Like,
and as for Russians, to whoever tells me that, Russian stars don't come to America, I would say, well, the last Russian stars who didn't come to America was when it was called the USSR.
Come on, yeah.
They all come. Kaprizov, it took a few years, but I think there was miscommunication between him and Wild Management at the time, from what we read. But they all come. I mean, Evgeny Malkin, Alex Ovechkin, all these guys, Mishkov, Demidov, they all come. I mean, I think the Russian factor is something to consider if you have a guy that you see maybe as a second rounder and you see as a middle of the lineup player in the NHL. Then these guys sometimes they will and there's a former NHL player who told me that he knew of a few Russian players who were telling him, look, if I'm going to play in the NHL, I better get better money than at home.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay. And so a guy, obviously, if he's going to make like $1.5 million in America or $1.5 million in Russia, he might stay in Russia. But the minute you have the guys who are going to be paid like $5, $6, $7 million in North America, they're going to come. So I think it's more like this is why, a guy like Kirill Marchenko dropped. Because Marchenko is pretty good, but he wasn't a star per se. Therefore, you might think, okay, well, what if he becomes a third liner here? He probably won't want to come. These guys don't want to play in the American Hockey League, most of them, because they feel I'm going to make more money at home than getting an entry-level contract where I'm going to be paid, what, $75,000, $80,000 in the AHL? And you're not even sure you're going to make it to the NHL. So, okay, I'm staying home. But these first round picks, I mean, they all come. So that's my conclusion. It was a very, very interesting topic because this is obviously something that I've thought of a million times while looking at draft lists and everything, but I never took a deep dive into it. I never did. To me, it was just like, oh, this guy's a faller. Oh, this guy's a riser. But this is the first time that I took a deep dive. So I really thank the listener for this idea for a topic. It made me more knowledgeable about it.
Great suggestion. And we invite all of you watching to chime in the comments. If we forgot a riser or a faller that you want to mention, why they fell or rose, your conclusion to the phenomenon, and if there's any correlation or any sort of analysis that you would like to make, we want to hear from you. And send us more topic suggestions. We've gotten so many good ones. We're going to keep doing these for sure. Snake, before we move along, I think it's a perfect opportunity for me to tell all of our listeners about our great partners here at the Sick Podcast. I want to start off with a big shout out to our friends at Cheapest T-shirts. It's in the name, okay? If you're looking for the cheapest prices on wholesale apparel in Canada, you will find them at cheapesttshirts.ca. They're proudly Canadian and trusted by thousands of customers from coast to coast. They deliver unbeatable value every day. You'll always get the cheapest prices plus same-day shipping and even next-day delivery. So your order arrives fast. Cheapesttshirts.ca is the go-to source for teams, businesses, events, apparel printing companies, and resellers, and even just individual shoppers. If you want the best deals on everyday apparel and a free shipping on larger orders and a simple, easy-to-use website that makes online ordering a breeze, you just got to go to cheapesttshirts.ca. Very simple. And also a big thank you and a shout out to our friends at Betway. Don't select a bust with Betway and get a deposit matchup bonus up to $300 on your first deposit. You can scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. The offer is only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. The offer is not available in Ontario, and you must be 18 years or older. Please play responsibly. And with that, it's time for Snake's Hot Take. I'm excited for this one, Snake. What you got cooked up for us?
Well, it's a topic that has been brought up again this week. Fighting in junior hockey. QMJHL has very strict rules about fighting. Rules that the OHL and the WHL don't have.
Yeah.
And, it's been... Now they've been asking if perhaps it would hurt the draft stock of some QMJHL players because they're not used to fighting, and there's fighting in the NHL. So basically, if an NHL team has a choice between an Ontario Hockey League guy and a Q guy, one of them fights, one of them has never been seen fighting, that they wouldn't take him. Well, I think this is all ridiculous, this fighting thing, for many reasons. Yeah, there are fights in the NHL, but it's pretty much always the same guys who fight, first of all. And there's less fighting than before, obviously, because there used to be 1 or 2 enforcers per team. And now, not every team has an enforcer, I would say. And secondly, there's no fighting allowed in the States. USHL,
college hockey,
NCAA, college hockey. I mean, there was a fight the other day.
Boisvert, he went at it.
Yeah, that's so rare. That's so rare. And I don't think the Habs drafted him because for his, pugilistic talent. I would say that Europe is the same thing. So based on that, where is fighting allowed, really? Ontario Hockey League, WHL. I know most of the guys drafted by the NHL come from those 2 leagues, especially in Canada. I mean, they're the feeders, of players in the NHL. But I don't even understand why it's a topic of discussion. I don't even know why the issue is brought back. That, because I think it was kind of a government ruling, wasn't it, about the Q? I think the government was involved in all that, or they put pressure on the Q to abolish penalize fighting more than in other leagues. And look, I've said it before. I've never been interested in hockey fights, really. I never bought Don Cherry's VHS cassettes.
Rock 'em, sock 'em.
You remember that? Yeah. I like hits. I like good hits, good clean hits.
Physicality.
Physicality. I love physicality because it's part of the game, but I really don't care about fighting. Okay, some people do. And mind you, if you go to the Bell Center or the Place Belle, no one goes to the bathroom when there's a fight.
Oh, everybody's on their feet. Exactly.
No. Yesterday in the American Hockey League, I watched Bakersfield against Henderson, Vegas and Oilers farm teams. Mm-hmm. And there was a violent fight at the beginning of the year. In the first 5 or 6 minutes, a very violent fight. And at some point, you can see that the guy's visor, the Bakersfield player's visor, was covered with blood. I'd never seen that before. And right away, the camera panned out. And you never saw the guy. You only saw a flash of the blood, and then they panned out. And so you couldn't see it. And then the employees, they went to clean up the ice. You didn't see anything. The camera was just static, looking elsewhere. And the commentators didn't even mention the word blood. Oh, they said, they have some scraping to do.
Okay.
I would paraphrase it, but it was more like they have some scraping to do because of something that happened. Something like that, they said. So, look, come on. I mean, if you're going to discuss why Quebec doesn't produce as many stars as they used to, maybe 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago, I mean, focus on something else. Mm-hmm. Okay? Fighting is not the issue. There are tough players in the queue. And it doesn't mean they're not going to be tough in the NHL. So that's how I feel. And I just think it's ridiculous. Look, I was interviewed by TVA in Chicoutimi this week about that topic. And honestly, I didn't know what to say. To me, it's all ridiculous. And would I ban it in the NHL? Like I say, I don't care. I'm not. I just don't care about fighting. It's not something that makes me watch a hockey game.
Yeah, there's certain instances where you kind of you're like, okay, yeah, I get it, right? To me, there's a few that come to mind. The first one being to avenge a player, a teammate.
Yes.
Your goalie gets run, your rookie gets a cheap hit or whatever it may be. You know what? Let me teach you a lesson. Let me hit your face a few times, right? Understandable. Or, in now there's less of that, but when there's two, I guess, fighters, and they want to like re-energize the building or the game or something, right?
Give
on
a
the
show.
face off, they're like,
Matt Rempe.
Yeah, that's pretty much all he does. So in that sense, they're like, okay, let's go. Let's put some energy in the building. Let's put some energy in the game. I don't like these fights personally. I think they're meaningless. But hey, you know what? It does work to some degree, right? So in that instance, I guess that being a fighter per se could bring a little bit of value, but when you talk about a junior league banning fighting, and now that could detract scouts from draft, that's ridiculous. You don't draft a player based on his fighting ability. That makes no sense. Okay, you 97 or 98% of the game you're playing hockey, right? So you need hockey players. You can't just have knuckle draggers who just wants to hit everything. That doesn't make any sense. So I see kind of both sides of the coin, but there's no question that there is no draft value in fighting. Okay,
no, there's no draft value.
For the rest, I mean, sure, I guess it makes sense sometimes in the NHL. But come on, you can't base your draft analysis on a guy saying, "Oh, well, he can't fight. He doesn't fight on his league. I don't want him on my team."
I think the most intriguing fights in hockey are don't come from what you just talked about, what I call stage fights. Both coaches put the enforcer on the ice, and that the minute the puck drops, they're going to fight. That stage. What's intriguing is when stars fight.
See, that's nice.
Didn't Vincent Lecavalier fight once in his career?
I remember.
And I mean, every time I'm like, oh my God, that's nice. A star is fighting.
I like that.
It's kind of intriguing because what you're thinking is that, okay, this guy is at it, with the dirty shot, the cheap shots, the dirty checks. So to me, it kind of makes me smile because it shows a lot of character.
Hey, Pasternak and Matthew Tkachuk went at it. I remember that one.
Yeah,
that was like, whoa, okay, interesting.
Especially Pasternak. I mean, he's a big guy, but he's not a fighter.
I love
so. But anyway, just to conclude, I mean, in junior hockey, it's another I would call it useless conversation this week.
That aspect is ridiculous, but listen, I would be a hypocrite if I said that I didn't like fighting sometimes, because some of them like actually make sense. Like let's say you're taking a revenge on, let's take Nick Cousins, for example, who in preseason takes a 2-hand slash to Demidov's hands, right?
Yeah.
Right. In the next game you play against the Senators, you're going to want to drop the guy. Like that makes sense to me. That, okay, like there's a reason behind the fighting, and you're allowed, with a 5-minute penalty, you're allowed to fight. But just staged fights or a guy going after another guy after a clean hit, never like those. I never like those. Those are meaningless to me. They kind of take the meaning out of the fight. And after that they're tapping each other like, hey, good fight, buddy, good fight. No, I want you two to hate each other. Like that's the whole point. You got to hate each other, man. Anyways, that's we could go down a rabbit hole with this one, but that's a great hot take, Snake. I don't even think it's that hot. I completely agree with you. And with that, I think it's a perfect time to go digging in the mailbag. Two great questions lined up for today's show. The first one coming from Sebastien Turcotte. Is asking, we often say that teams need to build with draft picks. And we also say that during a draft, teams need to pick the best player available. However, I wonder when you can draw the line between always drafting the best player and a key piece to building a strong and balanced team. For example, the Habs for his size because they were in majority a small team. The Sharks this year could use a pick to draft a top defenseman because they missed out on Matthew Schaefer last year, and their blue line is thin. Great show, by the way. Thank you, Sebastien, for the great question.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's this best player available thing. Some would argue that there's no such thing as best available
subjective.
player.
Yeah.
I think what it comes down to is if there's an obvious choice when you're about to pick, an obvious choice for you, let's say, you are going to pick that player regardless of position. Like even a team let's say, that's loaded up front, they win the lottery and there's Celebrini available. Let's say the Edmonton Oilers. Imagine the Edmonton Oilers win the lottery in 2024. Very, very hypothetical.
I get it.
But it's an idea. Okay, well, we already have McDavid and Draisaitl. We don't need Celebrini. No. You take Celebrini. Same thing with the Islanders. Even if they had been loaded on defense, you take Matthew Schaefer.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like in 2022, the Habs had the choice between, a skilled centerman on the smaller side, Logan Cooley, and there was also good defensemen like Simon Nemeth. And you're thinking, more like a centerman, Shayne Wright. They needed centerman at the time. I think they still do. But they said, okay, let's go with Slavkovsky because of what he can bring 4 or 5 years down the road. Like Kent Hughes says, we're not drafting him for the now. We're drafting him for what he's going to be in 4 or 5 years.
And we're seeing
so I think in this case, that's when teams probably go with not necessarily what I call need, but what they think is going to be most valuable to them at some point. And obviously, a guy like Slavkovsky, because he's 6'4" and a big guy, he probably has more value than a very good offensive player who's 5'10" or 5'11". But he doesn't have more value than a Celebrini. So that's pretty much how I see it. It's not the best player available, I think, is look at Buffalo, okay? Buffalo always, for many, many years, there's also the luck of the draw. Like in a sense, probably that every time Buffalo was picking, they always had a small skill forward on their list.
Yeah.
Because they weren't picking number 1 or number 2 or number 3. But, Zach Benson, number 13, Mathieu Savoie, number 9, and Oslund, Yuri Kulich, so they had all these guys. I think at that point, if the guy is really superior to the next guy you have on the list, go with this guy and then make trades. And that's what they did because they traded Peterka, they traded Savoie, to get McLeod and Josh Doan. So you have to go on a case-by-case basis. And it's either you think that the surplus will get you what you want one day, in Buffalo's case, or in the Canadiens' case, well, let's get the guy who we think 4 or 5 years down the road is going to be the most valuable to us.
Yeah. And Snake, we've said this 1,000 times on this show. You don't draft for the player that he is today.
No.
You draft projecting what that player will look like.
Because your roster could be very different in 4 or 5 years when the player becomes an impact player.
Exactly. So no, that's it. That's a great point by you there, and a great question. Once again, we say that all the time, but we really do have some really smart listeners. Let's go to the second one. This one coming from Stevan again. Man, this guy is just nailing the questions. We've had him on the show a lot of times. All right, Snake, I'd love it if you could explain why Nicholas Lidstrom was so good and so effective. I didn't get to watch many Detroit games being a Habs fan, so I'm just wondering why it is that everyone says the same thing about Lidstrom. P.S. Love the show. We love you, Stefan.
Yeah, Detroit at the time during Lindstrom's career was not playing in the Eastern Conference.
That's true.
So that's probably why they weren't facing the Habs very often, and they haven't faced the Habs in the playoffs in 48 years, 47, 48 years. Might change this year. Might change. You never know. So I think Lidstrom is probably one of the biggest mysteries in the history of superstardom, in the sense that I don't think anyone could predict that he was going to win the Norris Trophy 7 times. Otherwise, he would have been drafted earlier. Yes, it was the early 90s. It was Sweden, but Swedish players were already being drafted by the NHL, and they were coming to America. It was not like Russian players at the time. So Nicklas Lidstrom obviously would not have slipped through the cracks had he shown more flash. Yeah. But he really aged like fine wine, because he won most of his Norris trophies, I think, in his 30s. I think his last one, wasn't he close to 40 when he won the last one?
Yeah.
And I think what happened with Lidstrom is that he was very, very economical in terms of the energy that he would spend. He didn't give a lot of body checks. However, he closed the gap, and he never looked like a fool. You know, he was never beaten one-on-one by players, but he was not physical. He didn't have to. He was a good puck mover, but he was not, a Lane Hudson or a Quinn Hughes, or, a spectacular guy that would go end to end, or back in the day, Paul Coffey and all these energetic, spectacular defensemen. But he did the job. He was a great passer. He could run the power play, but everything was done in such a way that you for someone who didn't know hockey very much, and you told them one of the greatest players of all time is on the ice right now, I'm not sure that a non-fan, let's say, would have recognized it. Whereas if you saw, Connor McDavid, anybody can see Connor McDavid.
Stands out.
Yeah, he really stands out. Guy Lafleur stood out, and Mario Lemieux stood out. But Nicklas Lidstrom didn't really stand out. But he did everything perfectly. He was a chess player. So I don't know if that's a good explanation of how he was. But personally, I think he's probably the most complete defenseman of all time. Not the flashiest. Some people would rank Bobby Orr in front of him. I think he's number 2, number 3 on many lists. Personally, I think he's probably the most complete guy. And Detroit started falling when he retired. I think he was the Detroit Red Wings. And a lot of people didn't agree with me at the time because they had some great players. But I always said that the constant, the most important player on the Red Wings for 15, 20 years was Nicklas Lidstrom. No Nicklas Lidstrom, no Stanley Cups.
Oh, no chance.
And that's a hot take. That's a hot take, because I remember at the time everybody was talking about the method, how the Red Wings develop players and blah, blah, blah. To an extent, maybe that was true, but they also benefited from no salary cap. So, they could sign players. I think they had a 90 million payroll. That's pretty much the cap right now.
Yeah,
they had a $90 million payroll 25 years ago, and that's the cap in 2026. So, so that's my opinion of Lidstrom.
Listen, I'm on board with you there. Nick Lidstrom was embodied efficiency. Just every shift, always something happening, always doing the right thing. And like you say, he wasn't flashy, didn't stand out, but man, like, what a player. And he was the general snake. I completely agree with you there. No Lidstrom, no Stanley Cups, no doubt about that. And that's going to wrap up today's show. Snake, anything else to add before we get out of here?
Just have a nice weekend, and a nice weekend to all the listeners.
Absolutely. Well, I second that statement. Thank you, Snake. Thank you to Juliana back at Master Control. This has been another great edition of the Sick Podcast. Trust the process. We will see you all again on Monday. Take care.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, Trust the Process on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.